Hello, everybody, and a very warm welcome to today's webinar brought to you by Shared Services Link and sponsored by Avalara. Today, we are going to be looking at mastering e-invoicing implementation lessons from the leaders. My name is Sarah Fain, and I am the head of content at Shared Services Link, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Alex Bulff, the Senior Director, Global Indirect Tax and E-invoicing at Avalara. You, of course, have a very important role to play in today's webinar as well, and that is just to make sure that you get the most out of your time here. The joy of live events is that things can go wrong, but things can go really right as well. So please put your questions to us. Alex is a real expert in this situation, so we're really lucky to have him here. So please send us your questions. The best way to do this is to use the question bar usually over the right-hand side of your screen in GoToWebinar. If you text us your questions, we'll be able to take those in about the last 10 minutes of the webinar. We also appreciate any comments you have as well throughout the session. Just to preempt some of the most commonly asked questions, the session will be recorded, so you can watch it again on sharedserviceslink.com, and you'll also, of course, receive a copy of the slides after the webinar. If you enjoy your time today, please connect with us on LinkedIn. Alex is always really great wealth of information on LinkedIn as well, so he's a great one to connect with if you haven't already. So just to touch a little bit on the context of what we are going to discuss in the webinar today. So as everybody on the line probably is aware, that the e-invoicing is not only a more efficient and secure way of doing business, it is increasingly mandated and required in a growing number of countries. But as you may know, e-invoicing implementation is not always smooth sailing. Sometimes it is sold as a plug-and-play solution, but the reality is very different. We conducted a survey with about 100 respondents, and we're going to be sharing the results today that hopefully gives you some insights to influence your strategic thinking. And we discussed not only some of the benefits, but some of the many issues that people may be failing to plan for. Just to give you a bit of flavor about the agenda for today, in the survey findings, we're going to be addressing the most common challenges, some of the mistakes that are made in e-invoicing implementation, the extra resources that need to be brought in to complete implementations, the reasons that sometimes e-invoicing is more time-consuming, and why integration is such a challenge. And of course, we'll have a bit of time for Q&A at the end as well. But before oh, and of course, I'll just show you a little bit who took our survey before we get into our first poll question. So our survey is mostly taken by respondents in Europe at 63%, 30% were in North America, and 7% were in Asia. I went through and tagged the job titles to see which area they fell into, and they were majority finance, 66% finance, 16% had a kind of a general management job title. That means they didn't maybe neatly fall into one of the above categories. 2% were from procurement, 9% from tax, and about 7% from IT. But we would love to hear from you and a little bit more about where you are on your e-invoicing journey. So coming up on the screen is your first poll question. So where are you on your e-invoicing journey? You may have more than one of these apply, but have you managed any e-invoicing implementation in the past or currently managing one? Are you looking to implement e-invoicing soon? Are you carrying out preliminary research? Or do you have no plans to implement an e-invoicing implementation? So great to see about over half of you voting. So again, you may have done one before, and most recently, maybe just select your most recent one. So I'll be closing the poll in 3, 2, 1, and the results are coming up on the screen now. So a little bit all over the board here, but most of you are on the e-invoicing journey. 19% have done it in the past, 29% are currently managing, 21% looking to implement soon, 29% in early research stage, and just 2 of you don't have current plans. But hopefully we will entertain you nonetheless today. So let me just bring up my screen again, and we are going to compare that to, I'm going to close the poll here. There we go. To the respondents of our survey, so who is actually on an e-invoicing journey. So the stats that we're going to be discussing today, you'll see that 50% have managed e-invoicing in a current or previous role. 24% were currently managing one, 13% were looking soon, 8% we're going to be carrying out preliminary research, and 5% had no plans. So a few ways to look at that is that either 74%, that 50 plus 24 are have managed or are currently managing one. But another way to look at that is that 95% are somewhere on the e-invoicing journey, very similar to the people on the line today. So Alex, I'd love to bring you in here just to give us a little bit more kind of color about kind of the evolution of e-invoicing journeys briefly.
Thanks, Sarah. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone watching, wherever you're dialing in from. So yeah, look, I mean, 95% are on the invoicing journey. I think if we had done this survey 3-4 years ago, the numbers would look very, very different. This really is in line with the trajectory and trend that we're seeing globally. E-invoicing really is the clear direction of travel of virtually every tax authority around the globe. And on a previous slide, you had a number of people completed the survey in North America. While we're not seeing a lot of the mandates there, because e-invoicing has become such a global issue, it's now HQs looking at e-invoicing strategically. Historically, it would have been handled by a very local team. When Italy became the first European country to mandate B2B invoicing from 2019, even then it probably would have been handled 90% by a local team in Italy, generally working with local providers, or indeed some people just outsourcing the issue. But really, we've now seen e-invoicing spring up across the globe. Different mandates, business to government, now more mainstream with business to business. Even on business consumer transactions, we're seeing some obligations, clearance, obtaining QR codes, unique numbers. So this trend is going to continue, and really every single finance department, tax department at the moment is battling with this. Well, apart from 5% here who aren't. But it is interesting, and there are certainly lessons to be learned. After your first implementation, you can use that as a template for your next implementation. You can learn lessons. You can identify what went wrong and what can improve. And really that sets the scene for this webinar, because we're collectively getting that feedback from all the respondents here. These projects would have been across the globe, Latin America, early adopters in Europe, some of the recent APAC implementations, but also people who are now implementing for the wave of mandates that are starting in Europe. A lot of people now implementing for Romania, the e-reporting from January this year that's about to evolve into full-blown B2B e-invoicing. Poland, the mandate's been delayed, but a lot of companies are still implementing. They're still preparing, for the mandate that will likely still go live next year. And then France, Germany, Belgium, Spain. The list keeps continuing.
Thanks. I think that gives a lot of insight into just how fast this really is growing. So we're going to get a bit more into the kind of the benefits and challenges of people on this journey. But one thing we wanted to touch base on first is a bit more on the technology, and specifically the ERPs. So we asked our survey respondents if whether they felt their ERPs were enough to compliantly manage e-invoicing globally. So just to walk you through the findings here, this top bar, the 29%, was the 29% of people who said that yes, we think our ERP can manage the e-invoicing process compliantly. The next two bars are people that have some doubts. So that 8% said that they think their ERP can manage the process, but not in a compliant way. 47% said they don't think their ERP can manage the process in a compliant way, and they would need a third-party solution. And 15% were not sure. So again, if you put those that 8 and 47 together, that's 55% of people don't think their ERP is enough, and just under a third thought that it was enough. So I'd love your input here, Alex, on the role of the ERP and in e-invoicing, and kind of why sometimes it isn't enough.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose the ERP is the engine of the company, for sales, for purchases, APAR, being able to issue an invoice compliantly, being able to receive an invoice to then process it, those are really core functions. And so there is a legitimate expectation that an ERP should be able to solve that problem. The problem we have with e-invoicing is there's so much difference. There's so many complications across the globe. Models differ, formats, standards, signatures, QR codes. In certain countries, you need to be certified, accredited. The path to that certification to certify an endpoint isn't always easy or clear, and you often need a local presence in that country. So this goes against a lot of the kind of core product management that ERPs have. And while many will try and support organically certain core markets or certain networks, it's very difficult for an ERP to fully support all the invoicing mandates globally. And it's not just being able to implement it, to go live ahead of a mandate, it's also to maintain it. These things are not static. Laws change, the content required changes, schemas evolve. And so, really ERPs are looking to either partner with e-invoicing service providers to help provide that functionality, embedding that functionality into their solutions, white labeling, or they're working with providers to help develop or co-develop connectors, really augmenting that core native functionality within the ERP, but really leveraging the specialist e-invoicing technology, an engine in the background, so to speak, that has that connectivity with different endpoints, has the certifications, has the ability to extend core services, microservices that maybe the ERP doesn't have. And then the ERP can still ingest what comes back. Is that an e-invoice, a QR code, a unique clearance number from a tax authority? And really then look to embed what the e-invoicing service provider, that technology is doing into core processes. Because every time an e-invoice comes in, it still needs to be reviewed by someone, accounts payable, an accountant. Maybe they need to make that invoice human readable. Not everyone can read an XML. We need to embed that into a workflow to review, approve, pay. Ultimately, with the integration going all the way, and we'll see this in the future, a lot of the process will be touchless. And my view is, even where an ERP, a business uses a third party to provide that e-invoicing functionality, it should be seen as an extension to the ERP. You don't want to be logging into a portal, to manually raise invoices or approve. The ERP should still be king. The ERP is the source of that data. Really see invoicing solutions as an engine. They're there in the background, providing that support, providing that value.
Thank you. I think that's really helpful insight into some of the technology necessary to get to the end goal of touchless processing. So what we're going to do now is dive a little bit more into the survey respondents' journey. But just want to let you know, we are going to be zooming in on the people who have actively managed, are currently managing, or have managed in a previous role. And we are going to be just focusing on that 74% and just kind of fading out the people who are still a bit early on in the journey. So one thing we asked is about whether people were able to complete on time and on budget. And one thing that we found is that the majority have struggled with both timelines and or budgets. So 31% of our respondents said that their project was more expensive than expected, but 66% said their project was more time consuming than expected. So that seems pretty big to me, but I just want to get your sense, Alex, if you're surprised by all this, and maybe what some of the key factors you think are behind this.
Thanks, Sarah. No, this isn't surprising to me. I've in past lives, worked on big finance transformation projects, ERP rollouts, and often these projects, do go over budget. They take longer. There are bumps in the road. I suppose, okay, everyone's looking at the bottom line and money, but at least some, you can go and request more budget from your finance teams. The problem we have on time consuming being longer than expected is you don't always have that road. Mandates have very specific dates when a business needs to be compliant. So, if you're not compliant on that day, you open yourself up to penalties, unhappy customer experiences, and in some countries, you just no longer have a license to do business, because if you can't raise a compliant invoice, if you can't receive a compliant invoice to pay that, the business really comes to a halt. So, my view here is don't underestimate the time it takes to go live in a compliant way. And really, that's not about the technology. I think that the issue here is we're talking about a project. So many times, we review RFPs, the whole focus is on the technology. That's what they're looking at to budget. And, businesses will spend so much time going into that detail on the technology, trying to get the best value. But ultimately, technology is just one piece. E-invoicing touches every single business department. It impacts real core business and tax processes. It's built on data. It's going to impact AR, AP, procurement, master data. The technology will work. The technology is being handled by a third party. Parties that know that well and will maintain it. The issue is more upstream data, the connection, training people, do not forget people, updating documentation, making sure you have that core base of data and content that you need to be compliant. And for me, that is often one of the things people forget. They just see it as a technology project, and the budget, the project plan, the timing is all just geared on the technology, not everything else.
Yeah, I think that's really important lessons to learn there, and that how many things that invoicing actually does touch. So one of those things we're going to touch on in our next slide here is the additional resource required in an implementation. So we asked our survey respondents in their e-invoicing implementation, did you have to hire or engage additional resource? So I'll read through the different resources here. So 48%, so nearly half, said they had to hire systems integrators. 36% said they brought in external advisors. 36% had to hire project managers. 22% had to hire extra permanent team members. 16% had to hire temporary staff. 10% had to hire management consultants. 26% actually said no, we didn't have to hire any extra resources. So that is 3/4 of respondents that had to hire extra resources, and they were mainly systems integrators, external advisors, and project managers. And there was quite so we don't have another chart for it, but a correlation between, I think it was 100% of those people who said they had to hire extra team members were also people that struggled to complete in a timely fashion as well. So people are struggling with both time and under resourcing here. So Alex, it'd be great to take your take on this. And I guess really the need for systems integrators really stands out here to me as well.
Yeah, so again, little surprise, because you need to integrate your systems. Let's just start off with ERP. Generally, most e-invoicing solutions will have an API today. Hopefully that's a single API for all countries. I know some companies through M&A sprees have dozens of different APIs you need to connect to. If that's the case, that's going to lead to more work. But you really need to integrate not only the initial call, sending the data to create the invoice, but you need to integrate the response messages. How are you going to handle errors? How are you going to consume documents, other lifestyle events that come back from your solution, QR codes, unique numbers, the AP side. You really need to integrate these into the workflows that are set up in your ERP or indeed other systems. And that would be my second point. Businesses often underestimate the number of systems they need to integrate into. There may be e-commerce platforms that actually generate invoices for particular sales. There may be certain divisions or companies that use other systems just because of historic M&A. There may be procurement systems, AP processing systems that are used, Ariba, Coupa, other similar platforms. So you want to make sure you've really identified your as-is flow. Where are invoices raised? And look at every single use case. What do you do for intercompany? Are there any particular things you do for particular customers in a particular geography? Identify the AP flow as well. Are there any other systems that need to receive invoices and in what order? And then, you really need specialists to be able to do that integration. It's less about what you're integrating to. It's more around knowledge of that source system. Where is the data? Where is it held? What is the format? How do I transform that into what I need to pass over to the e-invoicing solution? External advisors. This is often a tax driven initiative. Tax authorities are the ones who are mandating e-invoicing. Suddenly, your VAT compliance, your GST compliance is underpinned by e-invoicing. You are suddenly sharing with tax authorities really granular transactional information in real time. It's a very different approach to compliance. It's no longer end of the month, end of the quarter, preparing a consolidated return. We're moving to an era of continuous compliance. You are sharing a lot of data points with the tax authority in real time. And therefore, even though an e-invoicing solution will be designed to be scalable and be compliant, there's still policy there a company needs to make in terms of which transactions are sent as an e-invoice, what fields need to be populated, how you classify those, how you classify, for example, the exemption. Certain e-invoicing mandates will have very specific codes that categorize the tax type, the VAT exemption, VATX code in the EU. And therefore, you may need someone to help review that, someone to give you an opinion, someone to help you make a decision, because ultimately it's your tax policy and you're sharing that with a tax authority. Not to just go down this list in order, but project management, is key. Just because there are so many different stakeholders that are crucial to the success of a project. If you're lucky enough to have that resource already within the business, you're able to have that allocated or budgeted ahead of a project, that's fantastic. But we do often see people coming in on contracts, temporary staff who come in with that remit. And it's good for them to have experience about finance transformation. They understand systems, data, the different processes that need to be integrated.
So I think there's some really great takeaways. I mean, just some of the things being sure to walk away with is that, that we are entering this era of continuous compliance and not to neglect the number of systems that need integration and just the sheer depth of knowledge needed, both for the systems and for overall compliance. So I think, again, it's a good takeaway that the resource is just incredibly important in implementation.
Absolutely. And just one thing I'd say is, when you talk about advisors and consultants, it's not necessarily one size fits all. You want the tax expertise, but you also want the management consultants as well, people that really understand the technology, the process, the data, Particularly, within the big four global firms, we're starting to see, tax management consultancy teams really focus in on e-invoicing. So we're seeing centers of excellence spring up, people who can really bridge the gap between tax technology and this new e-invoicing era.
Absolutely. So I think that resource and that knowledge just seems to be crucial. So thank you. And that also really supports the findings of our next question, is that we asked people what their top challenges in implementation are. And I guess not really surprising with what we saw in the last slide is that integration with other systems was more complex than initially planned. Came out as the top challenge at 60%. Just looking down the chart a bit more, we had 32% of people cite that the early buy-in of key stakeholders wasn't received, so internal buyers failed to support the program. 32% also said that the cost was higher than expected. 30% cited data quality issues, 21% encountered compliance issues, 19% had issues with external communication with vendors and customers. There was a fair bit of other, and a lot of those were tied in with vendor issues as well. There was a lot of kind of vendor reluctance, which took a big chunk of that 18% and could possibly tie it into the one with the 19% about poor communication. 18% that the tax and VAT expertise were not included from the start, and a very fortunate 12% said they didn't suffer with any of these. But I guess my key takeaways is that, again, that integration with other systems is the main challenge, but still, a third struggle with buy-in, cost, and data. So it'd be great to take your take on this, Alex, and what your takeaways are.
Yeah, absolutely. So, integration, we've just talked about that and the complexities. Sometimes there's an API, you're then working on the quality of that API documentation. But that integration is also underpinned by the data. Do you have the right data content within your ERP, within your master data tables to support a mandate? And it often changes. When a mandate comes in, the ERP was fine. It had the minimum data fields that it needed to support a compliant tax invoice. But now it's not just about the field. It's the value that's populated in there. Schematrons, run by tax authorities will say you can only put a very specific value in that field. There'll be very specific code lists that you need to be able to support. And the ERP, the customer master data setup, may not have that already. So that's often an issue. It may be there's a connector. Connectors can streamline the integration process. We are developing a number of connectors, often with the ERP themselves. That can streamline the process. It can add some benefits, some synergies to the ERP, and make the process a lot easier. But ultimately, it goes back to what I said before. It's that integration. It's not just one single integration into the API to make the call. It's what comes back. It's being able to do some work within the core ERP to really get the value of the e-invoice. So you can manage the life cycle of that invoice within your ERP, and that you have the right data there to do your reporting, your accounts, your VAT returns.
Thank you. So yeah, I think there's really great insight into a bit more detail about the challenges of integration and what you need to keep in mind if you are on your journey now. But we don't want to be all doom and gloom. E-invoicing has a lot of benefits that it brings in, especially when it's done right. So we also asked our survey respondents who had implemented what the main benefits achieved with e-invoicing. And our findings were the number one is time savings and improved efficiency at 68%. Working down the list, 54% cited more controlled processes now that it's automated, 48% cited improved visibility, 46% cited tangible cost savings or working capital improvements, 36% said the AP team is now able to focus on more strategic programs, 36% cited increased VAT compliance automation, 30% improved auditability, and 23% improved relationships with suppliers. So just two things I wanted to note on this briefly. We thought that the cost savings initially seemed a little bit low, but we also appreciate lots of people are still relatively early on in their journey, so may still be in the process of achieving these savings. And the second one is that I know that the chart can make that bottom number look quite small, but actually it's not, 23% being the smallest number is actually still really good. So I think that the benefits are widespread and that a lot of people are achieving a lot of savings here as well. But again, the time savings, efficiency savings, process control, improved visibility, and financial savings being cited as the main ones. So yeah, what's your take on this, Alex, and the benefits achieved?
Yeah, I think one way of looking at it is, one of the overarching benefits is you are compliant. You can continue to do business in a country. You can receive invoices. You can get paid. You can continue to trade. But also that means that everything needs to be correct. So pre-invoicing, businesses have often lived with poor master data. If you didn't have your customer's VAT number, there was a theoretical risk. It may have been found out during an audit. There may have been risk of a penalty. With e-invoicing, if you don't have key master data like a customer's VAT number, the invoice won't actually be accepted by a tax authority platform or portal. It will be rejected straight away. Computer will say no. The customer won't be able to receive that invoice. So it's things like that. It really forces the business to address the root causes. That all of that data, all of that content needs to be clean. It needs to be granular, and that's going to underpin everything that happens subsequently throughout the life cycle of that invoice. So that's going to improve efficiency. I think it's going to improve the risk of errors, penalties, just because these issues have to be addressed head on. That is also going to lead to reduction in costs. It's very often difficult to get visibility in terms of the cost of legacy invoicing processes. If people are using legacy procurement networks, maybe they're paying fees for every new vendor or customer they need to onboard. Of course, that model, begins to disappear under an e-invoicing mandate. There's been some research in France. The French tax authorities point to the average cost of a traditional paper invoice or PDF invoice being around 10 euros, comparing that to an e-invoice, which is less than the postage stamp. I think in Australia, Deloitte survey, and they said a traditional invoice to print, to post, to process, review, or was typically about $30 Australian. But when you move to e-invoicing, it's that about 10 Australian dollars. So maybe difficult to identify all those costs, but I think you'll start to see those cost benefits emerge once e-invoicing is adopted and has really been bedded down.
Thank you, Alex. So we're going to just start summarizing, getting some key takeaways, and I just want to give a little reminder, if you haven't asked your questions, the best way to put your questions to Alex is in the question box, usually over on the right-hand side of your screen. So I just want to just wrap up what the data of the survey said. So we found, that all respondents generally agreed that ERPs alone are not enough to compliantly manage e-invoicing programs. Our respondents said 66% said that implementing e-invoicing was more time-consuming than planned. 3/4 had to hire extra resources, and they were mainly systems integrators, external project advisors, project management. And tied in with that, integration with other systems was the main challenge faced, but a third also struggled with buy-in, costs, and data. The time savings, efficiency savings, process control, improved visibility were the main benefits, as well as some cost savings achieved through e-invoicing programs. So I don't want to leave you kind of with more questions than answers. So I'd be great, Alex, if you could just give us a bit of insight, which you have done already, but wrapping up with a bit of what can we learn from this if you still all are on your e-invoicing journey?
Absolutely. So, this is, as I say, a global trend. It's not going to slow down. It's only going to grow. So the key here is to look at this issue strategically. You don't want just a tactical fix. You don't want to look at e-invoicing for a particular system or country or mandate in isolation. Really treat this as a strategic investment. Start addressing this as early as you can. You want as much time as you need to be able to implement, and it's not just implementing just in time. It's implementing in time to do testing, in time to have confidence in your data, in your tax policy that you've applied. You'll be able to test in sandbox. A lot of tax authorities will have sandbox dev environments that you can test transactions, you can get responses back. I would say from day one, really identify what e-invoicing is going to impact across your business. All the different departments, processes, sources of data, all the different systems. It's often not just the ERP. You're looking at upstream and downstream systems too. There may be e-commerce platforms. There may be other billing systems. There may be all these edge use cases that you can't ignore because you're still going to have to find an e-invoicing solution for. Identify the right stakeholders. Who needs to be involved, who is going to have a view, who needs to be kept informed, and start to give them ownership. Really get them involved, get them to the right meetings, get them in the room. Don't just see this as a technology project. Technology is key. I'm speaking from a technology company. We obviously believe in the core technology, but that just provides part of the puzzle. It's still underpinned on your policy, on your data, and it really needs to be embedded into your business as usual processes. Your people need to understand the change. E-invoicing shouldn't just be seen as a tick in the box to meet a compliance requirement. Maybe that was the case for some live reporting before, SAFTs. Really now, it's not about finding workarounds to just say you comply. It's about really unlocking the benefits of e-invoicing and making sure that the business is really getting those benefits. Don't underestimate the time. Do keep roadmaps. Have your own timelines. When you want to or when you need to meet mandates. Often there'll be waves impacting different companies of different sizes, even different industries at different points in time. But work back from that. When do you need to be ready? When are you going to be in a hypercare arrangement with your provider? When are you going to finish system integration testing? When are you going to do user acceptance testing? When are you going to do your training? How does this impact other events in the business? The whole business doesn't grind to a halt because of an implementation. So, think about when are audits happening? When's busy season for taxes? So don't underestimate that. Also try and identify the support you need. I know looking at RFPs, people want a single price. They're saying to service providers, we want you to implement it too. That might work in certain countries for smaller projects, but really, bring best of breed to the table. Identify, do you need support from an advisor? Do you need someone to review your master data? Do you need help with your policy? Do you need help with the integration? Does that need to be someone who really understands your source systems? And then bring this all together with the right project program management. You need to keep people on target. You need to make sure we're hitting these milestones. And then just to reiterate, if it's not a technology project, what is it? I would argue it's across the spectrum, but really any successful project is built on successful, clean, granular data.
Sorry, I skipped that. You can take your time with this. I didn't mean to advance the slide. If you want, did you want to wrap up with any of this, Alex? I didn't mean to rush you.
No, I mean, I think I've covered everything. I mean, I think that final point's really important. Embracing it. You know, e-invoicing is coming. You know, I suppose the irony, I'm sitting in the UK today. You know, the UK hasn't announced e-invoicing or a consultation, probably behind, you know, the rest of the global pack. But do buy into e-invoicing, do educate, you know, do lunch and learns, really educate people across the whole business, that key range of stakeholders. The more they learn about it, the more they'll appreciate the impact to their organizations, their processes, but also the benefits. You know, you want that positivity. Don't just see this as a cost, see it as the benefits that will unleash.
Absolutely. Yep. I'm with you, Alex. I think those are really great takeaways, and, you know, and being on the line today is also a great step as well. So thank you all. So yeah, Alex, I think before we go into Q&A, would you just give us a bit more information about Avalara, your role with e-invoicing and tax compliance as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So Avalara, we're a global tax technology company, SaaS tax compliance. We're celebrating our 20th year this year. You know, we're now part of Vista Equity Partners. If Vista was an enterprise software company in its own right, we'd be in the top 5 in the world, only behind Microsoft and Oracle. We have a range of cloud-based SaaS solutions. We help our customers achieve compliance, reduce risk, and streamline processes. All three very, very important when it comes to e-invoicing. We have solutions that cover 193 different countries. We have over 30,000 customers globally. In reality, that number is over 100,000. You know, when you look through the services our partners provide as well. Founded and headquartered in the US, but today very much a global company. We're always expanding, and actually we've just opened up in Australia this year. And yeah, this is just to show that the end-to-end indirect tax lifecycle, but we have solutions to meet that end-to-end compliance. And you know, before I alluded to this notion of continuous compliance, being compliant from a tax perspective is no longer a linear process. It really is real-time, 24/7. So we can assist with registrations, obtaining registrations in overseas territories. We can help classify your products for customs duty, import VAT. We're probably best known for our tax engine, Avatax, which is a global tax engine, can help with sales and use tax in the US. There's over 10,000 different tax jurisdictions there, but also globally, you know, helping with VAT, GST, and customs duty. And just to give an idea of the scale of the usage of our solution, in 2022, we received almost 40 billion calls to the API. And so, you know, within very busy periods like Black Friday, we're literally talking about several thousand calls to the API every second. E-invoicing, of course, you know, we're in the space. You know, we have a single global scalable solution, fully in the cloud. I'm the VP of e-invoicing product. I lead our team, improving the functionality, extending our country coverage, document coverage, working with our customers and partners. So we can support all the different models. We support around 60 different mandates globally, and that's obviously increasing every month. And then finally, at the end of that life cycle, we have solutions to support returns and reporting. You know, while many of those will be real time now, live reporting, e-reporting, linked to e-invoicing. We also have SaaS solutions that can help prepare VAT returns, GST returns, sales tax returns, EC sales lists, Intrastat, ledgers, SII. And again, in 2022, our software actually prepared and filed over 5.2 million indirect tax returns. So we really have that scale and confidence. And then finally, just the kind of snapshot of our e-invoicing solution. So we've launched our next generation cloud-based e-invoicing and live reporting solution, a single API. That API is built on a common global standard, universal business language. We will convert that data to whatever we need to meet a mandate, the various different formats, standards. We can digitally sign that, we can obtain or generate a QR code, and we will then send that to the relevant endpoints around the globe. So that could be the Peppol network, the Digital Business Network Alliance, DBNA, B2B Highway in North America. It could be direct to a tax authority, a government platform, eFactura, STI, or this could be shared with an end customer as well. And also supporting AP, so retrieving invoices from networks, from tax authority platforms, or from trading partners. So one single solution, one integration, scaling and growing very, very quickly. And really, I talked at the beginning about thinking about this strategically. That is why we have invested in the solution. We want a single way to comply, regardless of the model, regardless of the workflow.
Well, thank you so much, Alex. So yeah, again, I always learn so much whenever I speak to you. So really just want to thank you for sharing your knowledge with us today and everyone on the line. We do have some time for Q&A, so I will go to those. And what I'm just going to do as well is just put up a final optional poll while you're just digesting what you've learned today. If you'd like a specific type of follow-up, again, this question is optional, but if you wanted a demo, if you wanted more information about e-invoicing, Avalara, call with an expert, I'll just keep this up here for a minute or two while we take some questions. So Alex, this question came in just towards the end of your discussion when you're talking about the UK, and you mentioned that the UK was kind of behind the rest of the world. But where do you think that leaves us? Where does that leave the UK in terms of invoicing the rest of the world? So I guess if it's a two-way street.
Yeah. It's a really good question. Look, I suppose I'm not going to dwell on the UK position. I understand, HMRC are very much monitoring what's happening around the world. Northern Ireland, is covered by e-invoicing under VIDA, due to the unique relationship post-Brexit. So, we will see some mandates applied likely in the next few years. But I think it's a good point because, often mandates are more domestic. It's really domestic e-invoicing between two domestic trading partners. But e-invoicing can solve cross-border trade. And actually, that's often the risky thing because paper invoices get lost in the post. PDFs, get stuck in spam filters and remain unpaid. So there's some great opportunities to unlock more voluntary e-invoicing, just adopting e-invoicing to exchange invoices electronically with your trading partners. So Peppol is a great example of that. Peppol, there's about 750,000 businesses on that network. At the moment, more adoption in certain countries than others, but we'll see that ramp up, and that's a really great way. Go to the directory, search your trading partners, and then look, you can start exchanging e-invoices with them straight away. And then in North America, I'm actually on the board of the Digital Business Network Alliance. This is a service provider association and not-for-profit to encourage adoption of e-invoicing across the US, Canada, Mexico, and beyond. And that's providing a way of exchanging a common format with trade within and to and from North America. So again, a great way of unlocking that value, even cross-border.
Thanks. I'm going to just do a quick plug. Alex and I also did a webinar end of last year on Peppol, and we picked his brain, and the kind of the findings of our discussion are all in a report as well. So if you're interested in Peppol, I just wanted to draw your attention to that as well. So let's see, we got about 10 more minutes still, so take a few more questions. Alex, I know this would vary a lot from one company to another, but how long would you say it would generally take to implement an e-invoicing system from start to finish?
It's a great question. It will really depend on the resource that's available, the complexity of the mandate, the skill set that's made available. I've seen some of our customers go live very, very quickly, in a matter of weeks. Some will roll out different countries at the same time. Maybe that's going to take a bit longer, although there will be synergies by doing it together. What I like to say is, you really need at least, 6 months runway to implement. You don't want to be implementing right up to the deadline. You want to have full confidence in your data, your integration. You want your people to be trained, to be able to test. You need time to actually reach out to your stakeholders, liaise with your suppliers, your vendors, your customers. Maybe you need additional time to obtain master data. You're missing, certain tax or corporate IDs that you need for e-invoicing. So I think, kind of 6 months, 9 months, but you should certainly be starting to plan this project 12 months out, because budget is key, and it's not just budget in terms of money, it's budget in terms of resource, internal and external, and being able to identify everything you need to do, the relevant systems, data, processes, the key stakeholders. Don't underestimate that.
Great points there. Thank you, Alex. A few questions kind of about the appetite for future mandates, and I know you may not know this for sure, but do you think I guess the UK and the US are coming up the most. Do you think that the UK, when will they be mandating e-invoicing, and is there an appetite for mandating in the US?
Well, let's start off with the UK. I think at the moment, HMRC are very much focused on making tax digital. We've seen MTD for VAT be mandated for all businesses now. Really, that hasn't really moved the needle in terms of digitalization. It's just the submission of the VAT return digitally and having those clear digital links throughout the process. But I think it's inevitable in the next few years that e-invoicing will be addressed. I think VIDA in Northern Ireland might be the driver for that. But who knows what the next government's going to look like after the next election. And it may be that digitalization is going to be key. Both sides are talking about ways of unlocking growth in the economy. And we've seen countries like Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, where e-invoicing has been really encouraged, incentivized, even through credits, and faster payment times for public procurement. So I wouldn't be surprised if that might be the first angle in the UK, just to drive digitalization, drive adoption, the carrot first rather than the stick. And then you mentioned the US. I get asked this question a lot, particularly when I'm traveling in the States. The States is very different because you have the concept of state versus federal, and the states really dictate what happens within the state. So any commerce within that state is governed by state law. So it'd be very difficult for a federal mandate to apply. That said, it's possible that individual states will see the benefits of e-invoicing, or will at least have to appreciate the impact of e-invoicing on sales tax compliance. There are some bodies in the US, like the Streamlined Sales Tax Project, that tries to bring kind of standardization, harmonization, streamlining the approach to sales tax across different states. Perhaps, there could be some angle there around e-invoicing, formats, minimum data, e-reporting. What I think we will see is more broader mass adoption on e-invoicing. And the Digital Business Network Alliance, DBNA, B2B Highway, is probably one of the answers to that, because today there are literally hundreds of different formats, platforms, portals, networks. There are some multinationals that have full-time teams just retyping information into a portal, uploading PDFs, signing up to different procurement platforms just because a particular customer or vendor has told them they need to do that. The DBNA opens that up because it's decentralized. You don't have to use the same service provider as your trading partner. And actually that has had sponsorship from some of the Federal Reserve banks in Chicago and Minneapolis. So we'll start to see traction there. I wouldn't be surprised if e-invoicing is also unlocked through free trade agreements too. We'll start to see digital document exchange be bought up in free trade agreements between the US and other major economies.
Thank you. I think we probably have one last question. I think it's quite a nice one to end on. So the question is, if the e-invoicing isn't mandatory, what do you think is the second best reason, like a burning platform, to implement it?
I think it's around efficiency, and that efficiency is generated by having a clear, consistent digital process underpinned by clean data and being able to exchange a document in real time. You're moving away from PDFs and paper and all the manual process and all the human error or data errors that can occur. For e-invoicing, it brings you up to that next level. You're really transforming your finance function, your AP, your AR, and that unlocks benefits, process benefits, data benefits, cost benefits.
Excellent. Well, I would just say a really, really big thank you, Alex. You are just a wealth of knowledge in this area, and we are so lucky to have you on. And thank you so much to everybody on the line. Thank you for participating in the polls, for tuning in, for making the most of your time here, and for your really, really thoughtful questions. So we can feel you. We can't see you, but we can feel you. So thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in today, and the whole team at Avalara, who are just honestly a delight to work with. So if you do want to, have further conversations with Avalara, you are generally dealing with very nice people there. Just want to draw your attention. We've got a few other webinars coming up. We've got Intercompany. We have some things on SAP and Vita, CFO, CPOs, R2R. So hopefully something for you or your colleagues on the horizon as well. And we do have the PEPL report available on our site. sharedserviceslink.com. You can just search for PEPL if you don't see it straight away. So again, just a really big thank you to everybody making your time here today, and we look forward to welcoming you next time. Thank you and goodbye.